From Anatomy of a Game from David Nelson on page 161 comes this gem. The second trick play in 1913 was called Mutt and Jeff and became popular with the advent of the forward pass. A large player would place a smaller player on his shoulders where the latter could receive a pass thrown well over the heads of opponents. What? I just ran into this reading through Anatomy of a Game. I don't recall hearing about it anywhere else, seeing about it anywhere else. But then later, on page 168, again from Anatomy of the Game, we get from 1914 through 1916, the short punt, the modern shotgun formation, evolved with a triple threat of the kick, pass, and run. It was better suited for the three attacks than Pop Warner's single wing because a balanced line provided the kicker and passer more time from a depth of 7 or 8 yards. A 1916 approved ruling that permitted a player to catch a forward pass while on the body or shoulders of a teammate may have triggered the short punt formation. It gave more time to pass to players in what Stagg called the Mutt and Jeff formation. From here we learned that this play, called by Amos Alonzo Stagg the Mutt and Jeff formation, was actually legal, approved by the Rules Committee. So what's going on here? Who or what is Mutt and Jeff, and was there really a pass play where a guy got on another guy and caught a pass? And as you're going to find out in a bit, it's referred to as another name as well. Mutt and Jeff was a daily comic strip, much like Peanuts or The Far Side or Calvin and Hobbes or whatever might be a comic strip these days. I'm probably dating myself. But it featured two guys called Mutt and Jeff, and they were, as you can see in this photo, one of them was Mutt, and he was tall and lanky, and the other one was Jeff, and he was short and kind of stout. And they did comics about all sorts of things, relationships, and sports, as well as football. Now, Mutt and Jeff, the comic, was a huge phenomenon back in the day, being published from 1907 to 1902. It had a very long life. And it was so big, it became a franchise, like similar to Star Wars, where you had merchandising. And it was also a cultural phenomenon in that people used the phrase Mutt and Jeff to describe mismatches. So what about the pass play? Did that pass play really exist? Well, let's take a look at page 230 of a book called Touchdown by Amos Alonzo Stagg, as told to Wesley Winans Stout. And we get the tower pass was a Mutt and Jeff play. Two players, one tall, the other short and slight, dashed behind the enemy's goal line. The tall man lifted the little fellow in his arms, and little Jeff received a forward pass sent high over the defensive team's heads. So here in this paragraph, we see a key phrase, and the key phrase is tower pass. I went looking for Mutt and Jeff play, and I found very few references to it. Now, there was tons of references to Mutt and Jeff, but almost no references to a pass play called Mutt and Jeff, or referred to really by any way in that manner. But when I looked for tower pass, lo and behold, up comes a game between Marshall and West Virginia in 1915. Now, West Virginia beat Marshall 92-6. But as it states here, Marshall's only score was made when fullback Bonhar lifted quarterback Workman to his shoulders to catch a forward pass behind the goal line. Apparently, Marshall's scoring was a big deal, as West Virginia coach Saul Metzger had reportedly said before the game, "I'll eat my hat if Marshall even scores." A later account was shared about the play in an article from the Lincoln Journal-Star of January 11th, 1929, the Lincoln Journal-Star of Lincoln, Nebraska. That account stated, "We had one huge tackle, however, and when the ball was snapped, he stepped over the goal line, and one of our eligible men clambered up on his shoulders. I passed the ball to him, and he caught it. falling to the ground and fracturing a collarbone in doing it, but he clung to the oval and we had our touchdown, Workman explained. This play caused nationwide comment at the time. Some of the West Virginia players thought it was a huge joke and laughed heartily. It made Metzger so angry that he pulled out all those who had taken the play lightly and proceeded to run up the one-sided score, Workman said. Now, I found some other references from Marshall that say that the rules were changed right after this to outlaw the play, but that is incorrect. In fact, as I said earlier, the rules were clarified to allow the play to go on into 1916. From the Chattanooga News, December 11th, 1916, note that this is a year after the West Virginia Marshall game. And the article includes an explanation of the rule that states, under the approved rulings in this year's football guide may be found the following paragraph. If a player catches a forward pass while he is on the body or shoulders of another person of his side, the catch shall be allowed provided the latter player does not assist the catcher to advance by any positive motion. In other words, you could climb on a guy's back and catch a ball, but you couldn't have one guy carry another down the field, or you couldn't run around like you're playing Iron Horse, if you remember that game from your youth. From the Kansas City Star, November 26, 1916, here's an illustration showing how the tower pass is made. Now on the left is Coach Chambers, the Marshall coach who created the play. Then it shows two guys, one's small and one's big, and how the small guy climbs on top of the big guy's shoulders. And in the final bottom illustration, we see that they're throwing the ball, and the two guys together are so tall that the defense can't stop them. What an ingenious play. I could not find any real evidence that the tower pass was used in a game other than in the 1915 West Virginia Marshall game. But I did find a lot of people indicating that it may have been used. I mean, like it said earlier, it was kind of talked about a lot. For example, this article from the Pantagraph of Bloomington, Illinois, December 4th, 1916. Tower pass a big hit kind of indicates that it was used, but there are a lot of other articles, and I included that these are referring more to the potential of it being used than it actually being used in a football game, because if you think about it, executing it would be very difficult. You'd have to have the Mutt and Jeff type players. I mean, you wouldn't want a 6-foot guy climbing on top of another 6-foot guy, as that would seem to be very difficult. And then there's the timing aspect of having to do this against an active defense, even though it was considered a goal line play. And number 3, something to think about, a lot of teams probably just didn't have a small guy that was on the field for the game. Consider in those days, you couldn't just substitute whenever you wanted. You couldn't run a guy on the field for a specific play. Now, there are other references to tower pass plays being used later. Specifically, I found Missouri football in 1929 against Nebraska and again in 1935. But further investigation revealed that in this case, they were referring to lateral plays. We would now refer to these plays as the hook and ladder. So they weren't the same Mutt and Jeff play as actually used by Marshall in 1915. This is my first college football freak play video on this channel. I thought about calling it Football Oddities too, but freak play just seems more appropriate. I hope to do many more videos about freak plays, that being plays, whether they're planned or those that occur because of happenstance. So if you have any suggestions of plays I should cover, please leave them in the comments. This is John Johnston for Hardcore College Football History. There are a lot more college football stories to tell, and I plan on doing so on this channel. I hope you like them, and I hope you subscribed and stay tuned for more. Please share them with your friends who might be interested in either college football or history so that I can grow. I should point out that at the beginning of this story that this type of pass play is accredited to Amos Alonzo Stagg, and here I've accredited it to this Coach Chambers from Marshall, Boyd Chambers. This is a common problem with looking up a lot of this information, and that is that coaches like Amos Alonzo Stagg or Fielding Yost or Walter Camp even cried they tried to claim a lot of inventions about football, whether they did or didn't, and sometimes it's hard to tell. The other problem is that things can be attributed regionally a lot of times. For example, who threw the first forward pass, who invented or discovered the forward pass. There's a lot of guys doing the forward pass simultaneously, and it seems like the person who gets the credit for it is the ones that's the loudest and most insistent. And like Stagg continues to stay in touch with reporters and people who write books. So just keep that in mind when you're watching these videos. That it's kind of like, who invented calculus, Newton or Leibniz? And that's just a reference. You don't need to go into it about calculus. I don't, please.